It's a very complicated role to be Native American. You have to understand tribal sovereignty policy, how to develop untrust lands, federal law, federal resources, state law, state resources, county restrictions, city restrictions. You have layers upon layers of systems in our current economy that you have to untangle a bit and unpack to really get to the root cause of the problem's success.
This is Hourglass, the podcast for United Way of King County in Seattle. Coming up, a conversation with Andrea Alexander, a Makah Tribal Elder, activist, and community development expert who leads the Northwest Native Asset Building Coalition, an Edmonds-based United Way-supported nonprofit that empowers Indigenous communities through education and facilitation. On the eve of Seattle hosting the National Congress of American Indians' 82nd Annual Convention and Marketplace this week, we sat down with Andrea to chat about the Northwest Native Asset Building Coalition's efforts to provide economic development and asset building to Indigenous individuals, families, and communities. We will also discuss our work to provide food access to residents amid the fallout from the federal government shutdown and our upcoming free tax preparation campaign. I'm your host, Joe Burris. Thanks for tuning in. Since its founding in 1944, the National Congress of American Indians, or NCAI, has been one of the nation's oldest and largest organizations serving the interest of Indigenous tribal governments and communities. This week, the organization is hosting its 82nd Annual Convention and Marketplace at the Seattle Convention Center. NCAI says that tribal leaders, organization members, Indigenous youth, and allies across the Indian country will gather to tackle critical issues, strategize for the future, and strengthen nation-to-nation relationships. Among those locally who will take part in the convention is Andrea Alexander, a Makah Tribal Elder, activist, and community development expert. She co-founded and leads the Northwest Native Asset Building Coalition, an Edmonds-based United Way-supported nonprofit that empowers Indigenous communities through education and facilitation. Andrea leads the local planning committee for the NCAI Convention and Marketplace, and she says that about 2,000 people are slated to attend. Andrea herself has become synonymous with what it means to empower Indigenous communities through financial education, economic opportunity, and asset building. From her work in the Pacific Northwest, the Great Plains states, and our nation's capital, Andrea has leveraged more than $480 million for Indian country in areas of work including tribal transportation, energy, and telecommunications. The Northwest Native Asset Building Coalition offers workshops, training programs, and one-on-one support to help individuals and families manage their finances, build wealth, and create sustainable futures. Andrea also founded Potlatch Fund, an Indigenous organization that provides grants and capacity building support to Indigenous communities in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Montana. Both organizations are members of United Way of King County's Indigenous Communities Fund. Since the fund was launched in 2020, we've granted about $5 million to local groups to address the many needs in King County's Indigenous communities. On the eve of NCAI's annual convention and marketplace here, Hourglass sat down with Andrea for a conversation about the origins of her work, the programs offered by Northwest Native Asset Building Coalition, and addressing issues in Indigenous communities such as the need for affordable housing. Here's what she had to say.
I'm a Makah tribal member. My reservation is located in Neah Bay, which is the most northwest point of the United States where the Straits of Juan de Fuca and Pacific Ocean meet. It's a beautiful, beautiful reservation. It's very isolated. It's hard to get to, but we can see Canada from across there, and we have a lot of Canadian relatives.
Okay.
My mom is Native American. My dad's non-Native. His family hails from the town of Newport, Oregon. His parents, he's the youngest of 9 kids, they settled Newport at the turn of the century. And my grandfather, who, of course, I never met, one of the claim to fame is that he helped build the Yaquina Bay Bridge, one of the most beautiful bridges in the state of Oregon. So I have deep roots here in the Northwest. And so my work really centers on being place-based. I call all the Northwest my home. And as an urban Native, I work with Natives both on the reservation and off the reservation under the Northwest Native Asset Building Coalition.
Okay.
So that's really where my heart and my passion is to try to leverage and bring resources to all of my people.
And in addition to the Northwest Native Asset Building Coalition, you started other nonprofits, indigenous nonprofits, including at least one that is funded by United Way. Tell us about that.
Yes. My first job in Indian country was under First Nations Financial Project, a national nonprofit where I was mentored by Rebecca Adamson, Cherry Selway Black, and leaders from all over the country. I moved home from the D.C. area and started working as the first paid executive director for the affiliated tribes in Northwest Indians that actually gave me the political connections, but also provided mentorship and leadership from key tribal leaders like the late Joe Dela Cruz from the Quinault Nation, Ron Allen, Milton Ascott, Anton Minthorn, just the giants of Northwest Indian country. And I really watched and learned from them. So after I left the affiliated tribes of Northwest Indians, I moved back home to my reservation where I was executive director of my tribe for 3 years, Nia Bay, and it was wonderful. But at the time, my husband couldn't find work on the res because he's full-blood Haida, and it's really hard to find work in Nia Bay. He was a construction worker. There's 2 things you do in Nia Bay. Either you're a fisherman or you work for the tribal government. And so not a lot of job opportunities. So when I moved back here, my first job was with Northwest Social Justice Fund here in downtown Seattle as the grant manager. And I noticed my first job at philanthropy, I noticed, wow, there's not very many Native Americans that work in philanthropy. And then I realized, gee, I'm the only one. That doesn't really make sense. So we started organizing both with all my good friends, mostly my girlfriends like Natalie Charlie from Quinault, Arlen Starr from Warm Springs, and just a great group of women and men that were committed to how to leverage funding for Northwest grassroots people. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, we started the Potlatch Fund, being mentored by a lot of the key donors that were with Northwest Social Justice Fund at that time. And it really is a success story as far as I'm concerned, because it wasn't just me, it was all my friends, of course. And we had a lot of support. But it was the first Native-led community foundation in the United States where we would raise money and then re-grant it. And so what a wonderful experience at that time. But philanthropy in those days, this was, mind you, 21 years ago, that was when the Gates Foundation just started. That's when Paul Allen just started. So the philanthropic movement in Seattle at that time was really vibrant. And I was just lucky to be at the right time, at the right place to start this. And it's been a successful movement. It changes and ebbs and flows like we all do. But I'm really proud of the work that they're doing and what we've been able to achieve, as a community.
Okay. And so now what prompted the founding of the Northwest Native Asset Building Coalition?
That's a really good question. At the time, this was 2005, as urban natives, we had very few resources around the housing issues and financial literacy. So it was really led by my girlfriend, Iris Friday, who was the main person at HUD 184 program. She worked for HUD, she just retired. And of course, now she runs the Native Action Network.
That's right. Also,
so, it's working with key leadership like that. Claudia Kaufman, my nephew, Bear Alexander, Klinka Haida, Laverne Weiss, who was working at Seattle Union Health Board. We had a lot of support to take this work on, and we received funding from Washington Mutual, my good friend Tim Otani at the time. We had a lot of support there, funding support, and also the old, we called it CTED from the state of Washington. So we really moved out quickly to provide financial literacy training around scholarships, how to get college scholarship for kids, and really trying to fill that void. We did a lot of housing fairs. Things were just going great until they weren't in 2008. When the recession hit, and of course we saw what happened, Washington Mutual crumbled, and that flavor of the year went away. And so Northwest Native Asset Building was dormant. So we were able, though, with our group to restart that movement during COVID because of the needs and the funding that was available, and received funding to provide virtual training around financial literacy. And we really tried to move from just being urban-based to statewide. So we moved out from Seattle Urban Indians to serving the 29 tribes in the state of Washington, as well as urban natives. And that was, I guess, the golden side, the good side of COVID, of being able to provide both in person but virtual was really important because the people on the reservation have a lack of access to key resources.
So now, while people were talking about the needs that were amplified during COVID, you were out meeting those people's needs.
Yes.
What was that like?
It was a lifeline for me personally to connect with my people and to provide a service and to frankly have a job. Everybody was broke. We had no money, brother. Let me tell you, everybody was hurting. And so my role is always, I'm a pretty good fundraiser. I've raised a lot of money in my lifetime for a lot of things. And I think people will agree with that. It was a family tradition by my father, who was a champion salesman. So I converted my corporate marketing experience to nonprofit fundraising. So I am really good at fundraising and running programs and providing a vision for a program, because I've helped many tribal leaders take an idea that where they see a need that's not being met. They'll give me the idea, they give me the vision, I raise the money, and I help them implement their program. And I would say, that's really my gift. And I love doing startups. I just love them because I love taking a vision and moving things out when we as Native people see something that's a need that's not being met.
And so as I look at the work that you do, there's three that I want you to sort of talk about here in depth. Entrepreneurship, sovereign housing development, and economic advocacy.
Oh, thank you. Well, entrepreneurship, I walk that every day. I've always run, I run my own consulting business. I'm very independent. You have to be that as a Native activist, because although our tribal governments are very, very successful, mind y'all, they're governments.
Right.
And Native people are really very conservative. So one must be very careful, and it's very, very hard to take risk. So my role has always been to be kind of in the middle And I run all my nonprofits like a small business. So right now, when I say survive, thrive, and pivot, that's my new motto for this year under this current administration, where we're at with their economy. Everybody on my team is an entrepreneur in their own right. We're a virtual team, and that's what makes us succeed, that we keep our overhead low, we come together as professional experts and move programs out that meet the needs of our people. But in addition, it's not just about me. What I provide as a coalition, and that's what Asset Building Coalition, I have a 30-year track record. I bring connections together. So I bring together the best subject matter experts, and there's a lot of very successful Native-led organizations that provide entrepreneurship training. One of them is my good friends, my girls over there in Spokane, like Sister Sky is a perfect example. So it's very, very important that we help the grassroots people. We have, as Natives, a lot of natural entrepreneurship activities, but because we lack intergenerational wealth, our people don't have access, leverage to money. And so how can you grow? So that is always a challenge that I've been working on for 30 years and helping leverage investments into our Native-owned businesses.
The sovereign housing development?
Oh, housing, number one issue in all the country for African-American folks, Hispanic folks, Native American, and on reservation and off reservation, it's a real struggle with housing, and we all know that. How do we use our creative resilience as Indigenous people to come up with new models of housing that meet the needs of people where they're at? And so we're always striving to come up with innovative models. The main area of training that I'm working on right now, frankly, is the training for the Covenant Home Ownership Program with the state of Washington.
Okay.
Brother, you get 20% down payment, and you can also leverage other down payments. And so a lot of our people don't know about that. So I'm working with my sister, who's one of your grantees, Miss Tracy Brown, who runs Healthy Smart Homes, and we're teaming up and to collaborate to bring training to the reservation and to urban Indian people. So I see that as really, really important to ensure that our people know the resources that are out there. And that is a really hard thing right now, is to be that resource broker, right?
Right.
That trusted advocate.
Than economic advocacy.
Well, the most important thing when you work in Indian country, every program development involves policy change in Indian country. It's a very complicated role to be Native American. You have to understand tribal sovereignty policy, how to develop on trust lands, federal law, federal resources, state law, state resources, county restrictions, city restrictions. You have layers upon layers of systems in our current economy that you have to untangle a bit and unpack to really get to the root cause of the problem's success. And I'm going to give you one example that I think has been very successful in Indian country. That's the Native American CDFIs.
Okay.
Brother, those have worked because you have a small nonprofit organization like my girl over in Tahola, Natalie Charlie, who run the Talia Fund, that was able to run a program and leverage private investments to grassroots people on the reservation. She focused on the local entrepreneurs there, as well as developing a match savings account for scholarships for our Native youth so they could afford to go to college. So just creative ways to help folks that are coming up with intergenerational poverty. And mind you, if you understand and you live on trust land, your home, it's not a finance mechanism because it's on trust land. In other words, you can never sell that house to anybody else. So it makes it very difficult to use that home like some folks do to get like a second mortgage and pay things. So the trust land status always adds a bit of a high level of complications. And that's what, in fact, I just talked to my girl Tracy Brown this morning, Healthy Smart Homes. We're seeking out lenders that have expertise on 184 to link them up to our training with the Covenant Home Ownership programs. So there's a lot of different programs there, but I'm really focusing on that one for now because we're pretty small, but we're mighty, but we want to do something and you want to do it right.
Okay, so you talked about the CDFI. What are some other examples where you would look and say, you know what, this is why we do this?
Well, CDFI is really example, but if you really think about when I started working in economic development, tribal economic development, that is 30 years ago, there were very few models of success for economic development. In other words, my first job was on the Pine Ridge Reservation when I worked at First Nations Financial Institute. And I lived in D.C. and I had to travel out to Pine Ridge, South Dakota. In those days, it was, you heard the saying, no brains, no headaches. I didn't know what I was getting into. I was very naive. Okay, Andrea, go out to the Pine Ridge Reservation and go help get this porcupine health clinic up and going. Oh, okay. So I went out there and I didn't realize how, frankly, poor that region is in South Dakota, And, I thought, well, we was poor nearby. No, these people, they poor. They're real poor. And, but they were tough, they're resilient, and I learned so much from them. But I had to go out and organize this community to work together and then raise money to develop this very much needed standalone porcupine health clinic. In the community of Porcupine, there was no stores, no gas stations, there's nothing. It just, wow, it was, it was a tough place to work and very isolated and took a long time just for him to go to the grocery store. And I called my mom and I go, God, Mom, I can't be able to come to a meeting, get him to come to the meeting. She goes, you got to bring food.
Right.
You got to bring the food. So every time I'd fly in from D.C., I'd go and fly into Rapid City, South Dakota, I'd go to the grocery store, I'd buy food and make a meal, and then people started showing up. And we were able to raise money to get to the next level to open the clinic and provide services. And it was a great learning experience, but it took, luckily I lived in D.C., I had to go to, at that time, Senator Tim Johnson in South Dakota and have him go and ask the Indian Health Service to move their services into the clinic because the model was not set up to serve in that clinic because it was not built by the Indian Health Service. So it just kind of shows you the level of the hoops that we had to jump through. I mean, it was a huge meeting I had to organize. So that just is one example of the hoops that we have to jump through. But one thing I've learned is you just have to be patient. And when we look at long-term policy change, always remember it's the grassroots people, the people that are impacted locally, that are there for the long-term policy change. And then they push it up the totem pole to the federal level or the state level, wherever that policy needs to change to implement successful programs.
So now for our listeners, what are some of the activities, programs, events that you would like them to know about, you want them to take advantage of here locally?
Well, we are entering our 5th year of the Native Financial Empowerment Training. It's we start in January. It's 10 weeks, just a weekly 1.5 hour of wealth building strategy.
Okay.
It's on Zoom, virtual. We've had a huge amount of success with that because it gives folks the tools to unpack their financial trauma. What is preventing them from moving ahead? How do we have those conversations in a cultural sensitive way? How do we make it a safe environment to talk about your relationship, if you're married, with your husband and wife on areas where you don't have agreement, but you need to work together as a team because marriage is a legal construct. So how do you work together as a team to clean up your credit, establish savings, right? That will happen in January. We also do provide one-on-one financial counseling. That's really important. Pulling people's credit reports, linking them to key resources. And then the one that is really, really important to me this next year is the home ownership training. Mm-hmm. And we want to take advantage of what's available, again, for both reservation and off-reservation Indians. And we also do fee-for-service where we respond to tailored training programs that are by, a tribal workforce program. So most of my clients are emerging tribal leaders that run their own programs. So I do a lot of train the trainers. Okay. That's building for the future, my brother.
Right. And so lastly, with everything that you've done, and we know sometimes it just seems like, as the old saying goes, what is past is prologue, right?
Pardon me?
It was what is past is prologue. That, we've been down this road before.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to go down it again, right? What gives you hope?
That's where we're at right now with this administration. Native people, we are tied. Our appropriations, unfortunately, and sometimes in a good thing, are tied to the federal government. The Bureau of Indian Affairs, we have treaties. We're sovereign nations. We deserve that funding. We gave up land for a promise of these treaties. The Indian Health Service, where we get our health care, we had to give up land to be able to live and survive. And so we know how to survive in tough times, because if we're still alive in 2025, then we're going to get through this. It's just another administration, and we will work together to be sustainable. And that's why my new slogan is, we survived, we got to thrive, but we're also pivoting. And I bring our community together. We're starting to have a Native think tank discussion where we bring together everybody in the Northwest Indian country that are working in economic development, and how we're going to support each other to have sustainable organizations and communities. And so we'll just lift each other up and support, because we've been there, done that, my brother. Been there, done that.
Awesome. Andrea Alexander, thank you so much for your time, Northwest Native Asset Building Coalition. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Joseph Ferris, and it's been an honor and a pleasure. And I really love working with the team at King County United Way. So you have a blessed day.
NCAI's 82nd Annual Convention and Marketplace began on November 16th and will run through November 21st. For more information, log on to ncai.org. For more information about the Northwest Native Asset Building Coalition, log on to nativeabc.org. For some in our country, 2025 must seem like an ongoing struggle to keep food on the table. There's been the downsizing of the federal workforce, which led to the elimination of nearly 300,000 jobs. According to a Forbes article, cuts to federal agencies and grants, as well as the implementation of artificial intelligence amid concern over White House tariffs, are the leading cause of job losses this year. Then came the Budget Reconciliation Bill, which mandated some of the largest cuts to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program in its history. Now, we are grappling with the federal government shutdown, which not only furloughed nearly 800,000 workers nationwide, but halted funding to SNAP and other federal nutrition programs. Even as the courts have ordered the federal government to replenish funding to SNAP, the 42 million Americans who rely on the benefits, including nearly 1 million in Washington state, are unsure as to when they will be able to truly rely on such benefits to come without interruption. At United Way of King County, we're continuing to work with partners to provide food assistance and address childhood hunger. During the federal government shutdown, we've distributed emergency grants to support food banks in King County, and we are working with the community on a broader response plan. We also annually tackle food insecurity through programs like home grocery delivery, breakfast after the bell, and summer meals. We also applaud the efforts of state and local governments to meet Washingtonians' needs. But we need your help. Log on to uwkc.org/donate and give to United Way's Our Neighbor Fund, which enables us to tackle issues such as homelessness and financial instability with bold solutions and community-driven programs to create lasting change. We also encourage you to reach out to your representatives in Congress and the U.S. Senate and urge them to continue funding federal nutrition programs and end the government shutdown. To reach your representative, log on to congress.gov. United Way of King County's free tax preparation campaign is gearing up for another tax season. Funded by United Way, the IRS, and the City of Seattle, United Way's free tax prep service is for individuals who make up to $80,000 a year or up to $96,000 for non-single filers. United Way tax prep specialists help clients understand their tax situations and take advantage of benefits such as the Earned Income Tax Credit and the Working Families Tax Credit. In 2025, United Way served 18,200 of our neighbors, helping them access more than $16 million in tax credits and refunds. United Way tax sites will open on January 25th, but currently we are seeking volunteers for more than 20 free tax prep locations throughout King County, including sites at the downtown Seattle Library and in South Center Mall, as well as our virtual tax site. Volunteers are fully trained and IRS certified. To sign up, log on to uwkc.org/taxvolunteer. At United Way of King County, we are working side by side with communities to build an equitable future for everyone. Hourglass United Way is a podcast that highlights how we and our partners spend time making a difference in our communities. Our work is made possible by the generous donations from people like you. Please send comments and suggestions about our podcast to hourglassunitedway@gmail.com. To learn more about our work or to support United Way, log on to uwkc.org. I'm your host, Joe Burris. Thanks for listening. Until next time.